everyone, this is John Daly. I'm here again with Bernie Goldberg for another episode of the No BS Zone. How's it going today, Bernie?
All good, John. How about you?
I'm doing good, thank you. Today we are going to talk about the news media, a topic that is very close to you, of course. I do want to mention to everyone right off the bat that we are recording this episode a little farther in advance than we usually do because of some scheduling issues. So if you're wondering why we're not talking about some huge news story that may be unfolding as of the time this episode goes out, that's why. But anyway, we're going to start off with some recent comments that Christiane Amanpour, I always say her name wrong, made about the town hall event at CNN that CNN hosted for Donald Trump. She was very critical of CNN, and she made some points that Bernie, you wanted to talk about. Go ahead.
Christiane Amanpour is the CNN's chief international anchor. I think we could agree that she's probably the best known on-air person at CNN. Okay. So when Chris Licht, the guy who runs CNN, decided he wanted to put Donald Trump on for an hour in a town hall meeting, Christiane Amanpour was not happy. She had what she called a robust uh, uh, conversation with Chris Licht, in which she said that she thought it was a bad idea to put Donald Trump on. She later relayed that story because when she was the commencement speaker at the Columbia Graduate School of Journalism, the Taj Mahal of journalism schools. And she relayed that story and she said, I still respectfully disagree with allowing Donald Trump to appear in that particular format. Now, one of the reasons she thinks it was a bad idea, she said, for me, of course, the fact that the American people voted three times against Trump and Trumpism, 2018, 2020, 2021, also speaks volumes, end quote. So Christiane Amanpour is saying that because Donald Trump was rejected by the voters three times, he shouldn't be on CNN in a town hall format, even though he's the leading candidate of one of the two major parties. There's more. At Columbia University, she told the students, maybe we should revert back to the newspaper editors and TV chiefs of the 1950s, who in the end refused to allow Joseph McCarthy onto their pages unless his foul lies, his witch hunts, and his rants reached the basic evidence level required in a court of law. His influence gradually decreased with all but his fervent colleagues in cults. So what Christiane Amanpour is saying, if Donald Trump is going to lie about something, don't put him in the newspaper and don't put him on TV. But then, Christiane, how would anybody know that he was lying? All we would hear is him telling the truth. And people might say, well, what's wrong with Donald Trump? Every time I see him on the news, he's telling the truth. So she didn't think that through all the way. And the idea, if you're a commentator, you could say bad things about Donald Trump. You could write bad things about Donald Trump. I don't like Donald Trump. I think he's dishonest, and I've written that as an opinion columnist. But I've never argued that he shouldn't be allowed in newspapers or on TV because of what? Because he lies a lot? That's not a good enough reason. Christiane Amanpour, and this is my final thing on this, John, for now. Christiane Amanpour feels this way because she doesn't like Donald Trump. Why not just admit it? I don't like Donald Trump. I think he's a bad guy. I think he's bad for the country. So I don't think we should ever hear from him again. No, that's not how a journalist should think. And that's not how a journalist should talk, especially when she's talking to the graduating class of journalism students.
No, it's interesting. I think the first point that you cited from her about the idea that because America has rejected Trump three times in a row, I don't think there's really. I mean, that's true, but that's not a good rationalization for anything as far as coverage goes. I mean, he is the front runner. He is for the Republican race. He is running again. On the second part, I'm a little more maybe conflicted than you. Part of me understands at least what she's saying. I'm not sure I don't really connect the same dots as she is, but Christiane So Trump's style is to, as Steve Bannon likes to say, flood the zone with BS. He throws out lie after lie in rapid succession. He dominates the conversation, and it's very tough in that sort of environment. That town hall, for example, it's very tough for a host or a moderator in real time to sort of keep up with it all. There's certainly journalistic and public value in calling out and correcting the lies in real time, in the heat of the moment. But doing so causes all kinds of interruptions and side arguments, and it comes across as biased, even if it may not be. So I could understand her saying, what's the point of even doing such an event? It's basically a Trump infomercial, is what it leads to. But yeah, what do you think about that
Well,
argument?
that's a reasonable point, but CNN has one panel after another after the town hall ends. One panel isn't enough for CNN. They have one panel which throws to a second panel. In those panels, they could have said, "We've been following what he said for the past hour. We have fact checkers. Here's what he said, not true. Here's what he said, not true." You don't have to do it in real time. It would be nice, but that's putting a big burden on the moderator to know everything. So even if the moderator announced in advance, I'm not fact checking anything, we're going to have a panel afterwards and we're going to put everything he said into perspective, that would be fine with me. But the idea of keeping him off of CNN, let me interrupt myself. Why did CNN do this? Because he's the front runner. They did it because they're hemorrhaging viewers and they need a ratings boost. And nobody provides a better opportunity for ratings than Donald Trump. And I think they did quite well in the ratings on that hour. So one other thing, John, and your point is well taken, but one other thing. What if this doesn't occur to Christiane Amanpour or other liberals either. What if some conservative equivalent of Christiane Amanpour, some important conservative commentator, said, well, Joe Biden lost twice running for president. I'm not covering him. He doesn't deserve any serious time. What about the dishonesty? We're going to get to that in the next segment. I wrote a whole column. It's coming up on Monday. Well, good part of the column is about all the lies he's told. This guy, you think Donald Trump is a liar? Joe Biden isn't much better. Trust me on that. When you read this column that's going up Monday morning, he has said things left and right that aren't true. So what if some conservative commentator said, well, let's not put Joe Biden on in anything resembling a town hall, or don't give him airtime on our channel because he's dishonest. Nobody would buy that. This is not about, well, Donald Trump's dishonest, he rants, he's like Joseph McCarthy. This is about, I don't like Donald Trump. Just admit it, Christian, and we'd all be a lot better off.
That's
I don't
funny
like
you bring
Donald
that.
Trump. I don't like Donald Trump. And I say I don't like him. I don't think he has the character required to be president of the United States. And I will say that in commentary, but I will not say that he doesn't deserve to be covered by a major, once upon a time, major cable channel or newspapers because he lies a lot. As I'll go back to what I said briefly. If we don't tell people that he lies a lot, how will they know that he lies a lot?
Right. No, that's a good point. I think that it's funny. It's funny that you brought up the idea. The point that he lies a lot. Trump lies a lot. Biden does too. I used to, when Trump was first running for president in 2015. I remember writing that a number of times in my columns that he's very Biden-esque. Because Biden was sort of like that back then. Even when he was vice president. But the other point you brought about waiting until after the actual event, in the next program on CNN or wherever it is, where they analyze everything, that they can explain what was a lie and what wasn't. I think I think one of the reasons they, or maybe a lot of other networks, would be hesitant to rely on that is I think a lot of people turn off. After the debate is over, they just switch it off, and I think that's sort of human nature. Especially you think about CNN pulled this big number. I think it was 3.5 million people with that
Right.
town hall. Um, you most of those people, I think, are safe to say, would be Trump fans or right-leaners, at least, Republicans. They're not going to sit around. They're not going to keep watching CNN as soon as that thing's
They
over.
don't, but
And I
that
think
group,
I get at least what they're thinking there.
but that demographic doesn't care if he lies or not anyway.
That's
Look,
that's a good
I,
point.
I think it would be great if a moderator, everything he said that wasn't true, let him say it and then say, well, actually, that's not true. And then went on. That's very difficult. That's very,
Right.
if I moderated the debate and I follow the news, I'd be terrible at that. I would rather say, please stay tuned because we're going to put what he said into perspective. But if it's a choice between putting him on and letting him get away with a few lies, which I don't like, versus not letting him on at all, I'm opting for letting him on and trying to correct his lies as best you can over banning him altogether.
What do you think? So at one point, Christiane made too, and I'm saying her first name because I always botch her last name. That at some point, Caitlin, Trump threw out a personal insult at Caitlin
Yeah,
Collins. I can't remember what he called it, nasty or something like that.
nasty.
Um,
You're nasty. She said, that's at that point I would have dropped the mic, right?
yeah. What do you think about that comment?
The things I've been called, if I drop the mic
Just
every
by
time
me.
somebody,
Just by me.
listen, we're all grown-ups. So Donald Trump called her nasty. Let the people at home decide if they like that or not. Let the people make a decision on whether they want to vote for him or somebody like that or not. But is that enough to drop the mic and presumably walk off the stage? You called me nasty. I'm not going to take part in this. Come on. What if Donald Trump did that? What if every time Jim Acosta or somebody called him names and said, you know what? I'm ending this news conference because Jim Acosta just called me names. You'd say, Donald Trump, what are you, a baby? Come on. You're a grown up.
Yeah,
The moderator could handle being called nasty, and she did handle it quite well.
I think so too. It's funny because you mentioned that with Trump. He actually, I mean, he didn't do quite that, but some people might remember back in 2000. I think it was 2016. It would have been 2016. The Iowa debate for the Republican primary. He actually boycotted it because he didn't like Megyn Kelly's question from a previous debate. So he didn't show up. He did something else, and he ended up losing the Iowa caucus. And a lot of people think that that was the reason why. So he's been sort of dropping hints that he's not going to debate this time on any of these things. Do you think that's true? I got to believe he's going to show up.
Not sure. I'm just not sure because the plus in showing up is he'll be on stage with 102 other Republicans. They'll all split the vote, and he'll walk away just like this will be 2016 all over again. He'll wind up with the biggest single chunk of the primary vote, and he'll win the nomination. That's the plus. The minus is he's up against some smart boys this time around. He was up against some smart boys last time around too. I want to make that clear. But this time, he's going to have to debate um, Ron DeSantis, maybe Glenn Youngkin, maybe Chris Sununu. The question is, and this is one you and I have gone back and forth with, the question is, will those people, if he debates, and even if he doesn't, will those people go after Donald Trump by name? Will they say, the reason you don't want to vote for Donald Trump is because he's a loser. He's lost in 2016. He won in 2016, lost in 2018 in the midterms. He lost in 2020 in the presidential. He lost the Senate a few months later in January of 2021. The midterms didn't do well in 2022, thanks to Donald Trump. Does he want to do his opponents want to go after him like that and say he's a loser? Or do they, and if they do that, I'll tell you what happens. They lose his most loyal supporters. Do they pick up in exchange for losing those Does he pick up whoever that who goes after him? Does he or she pick up moderate voters who might not have voted for a Republican otherwise? Who knows? But I'm not sure if going after Donald Trump head on is the best idea, but it might be, because at some point, if you think you should be president and Donald Trump shouldn't be, you got to say why. You got to say, well, why am I, Ron DeSantis, a better choice than Donald Trump? And going at him sideways might be the best way to go and to not offend his political base, but it might not be enough to distinguish you from the field. I know you think you got to go after Trump head on. You got to take him on with no holds barred. Am I right?
Yeah, well, someone has to. If it's not, like I said, Chris Christie could play, the role of kamikaze pilot, which he's sort of promising to do.
He would be very good at it.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, it doesn't necessarily, I'm not saying the person, if it's not Trump, has to be someone who takes Trump head on, but someone's got to, preferably a bunch of people have got to, because you're right. You're saying that, the most loyal Trump followers, they're going to lose their vote. Those people are going to vote for Trump anyway, the most loyal Trump followers. So you have to at least do something to bring him down a few notches, to dress him down, to make him weaker. That's what his whole, appeal was back in 2016. He was just hammering everybody who so much as had a critical word for him, and he made them look small. He made himself look dominant. You got to have some other alphas on stage, I think, that are coming at him and knocking him down to size.
Well,
It's otherwise you're just handing him the nomination.
well, I'm not sure, but let's take Tim Scott. Tim
Yeah.
Tim Scott says something to the effect of "morning in America." That wasn't exactly his words, but it's sunrise in America, something like that. That's an upbeat, nice picture, sunrise. And Donald Trump says carnage in America, right? Now, you could say, I'm Tim Scott and I believe in sunrise in America. Or you could say, you know, I'm talking about optimism and going forward and sunrise in America. And this guy over here, Donald Trump, is talking about carnage. And if you think America is a place of carnage, I'd vote for him. I don't see Tim Scott doing that. I could see only one or two people doing that. Chris Christie is at the top of my list. And Ron DeSantis is probably going to do it, I think. He's probably going to go. Trump says something, calls him Ron DeSanctimonious. He's probably got an answer ready for that. And that is, all of this is contingent upon one thing, whether he debates or not. I'm
Right.
not sure. I'm not sure he's going to,
Yeah.
not early on. And if he loses a couple of primaries early on, he may jump in. But if you lose Iowa and you lose New Hampshire, you're going into the third one, which probably is South Carolina.
South Carolina, I think.
I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
and
You're going in wounded. So Donald
no,
Trump
that's
is going to have to be, if he sits out the first and doesn't do well, is he going to go into the second? If he sits out both, he's going to have to make a hard decision, and that decision is going to be, I got to jump in because this isn't going well.
yeah, yeah.
And
All right. Well,
I think if he goes in, there are going to be several candidates who look so much smarter, so much more civil, so much more presidential that it's going to make Donald Trump look small this time around. Not the others, but Donald Trump.
that's what I thought in 2016 as well. It didn't quite, but yeah, we'll see. I mean, things are a little different, but I think what makes it difficult is you bring up that optimistic message from Tim Scott, which I agree with. I think it's great. I think and I don't see him going after Donald Trump the way other ones will. I do think a successful candidate can both paint this optimistic vision and still go after Trump. I think there is sort of a balance that can be had there. But yeah, I think I do think if it's not Scott, and I agree, it's probably not going to be him, but someone, and preferably multiple people. In my view, I know we disagree on this. Really need to take him down a notch and make him look smaller than he currently does, because he still looks like the man in charge right now, the alpha dog, the guy who's setting the agenda. And I think that needs to change if there is a hope to beat him in the primary.
Stay tuned.
Yep, yep. So next, we're going to talk about a topic of a recent column you wrote, Bernie, had to do with the Durham report and how, along with other investigations over the last few years, it debunked a lot of media narratives and reporting on Donald Trump supposedly colluding with the Russian government during the 2016 election. Bernie, can you remind people, I'm sure a lot of people remember, but can you remind people what the prevailing mainstream media angle was on the collusion story back then?
Yeah, the main angle was that Donald Trump was a Russian either mole or a Russian dupe or a moron who didn't know he was being played by the Russians. So for almost his entire presidency, the mainstream media ran countless stories about Trump's alleged ties to the Kremlin. They put partisans on who were posing as experts, and those people were invited on mainly because of one thing. They disliked, too soft a word, they despised Donald Trump. So now the Durham report comes out and it says there wasn't even a basis for investigating Donald Trump. There was nothing there indicating that he was tied to the Kremlin. Let me just read you a very short section of a Wall Street Journal editorial. The journal says the press corps was an all too willing accomplice to the collusion con, yet there has been little to no outrage or even self-reflection at having been played for dupes. So here's the mainstream media that ran thousands and thousands of stories, one after another, about alleged ties between Donald Trump, his campaign, and Vladimir Putin and the Kremlin and all that. And now the report comes out that says, you know, there's no reason to even investigate. And there's no self-reflection. There's no self-reflection that says, go on the air and say, we ran a lot of stories and maybe we shouldn't have. The journal goes on to say, and because they didn't show any self-reflection and didn't apologize or anything like that, they say, and it's a major reason that much of the country believes nothing it reads or hears about Donald Trump. Now, Donald Trump's most loyal fans don't care what they hear from the media, but there are a lot of other people that just don't trust the media. They just don't trust the media. I have a statistic or two on that. And so you hear about Donald Trump being indicted in New York. You hear about him being charged and convicted of defamation of a woman who said he raped her. You've got probably upcoming indictments in Atlanta and the federal government. You've got all this mess surrounding Donald Trump. And the journal says, and it's a major reason that much of the country believes nothing it reads or hears about Donald Trump. Because the media can't be honest with the public, because it won't say we got a lot wrong. And instead they said there's nothing new here. And that phrase I hate, it's a nothing burger. And people at home say, I don't believe anything you say. It isn't just about Donald Trump. And that's literally true, because a poll by Gallup and Knight just a few months ago found that only 26% of Americans have a favorable view of the news media. 26%. And 50%, this is incredible, think the news organizations intentionally mislead the public so that they could put forth their own particular biased point of view. 50% of people in America think the media doesn't only get it wrong, but intentionally gets it wrong. They're not, every time they have a chance to do something to get back some of their credibility, they just blow it. Durham report, nothing new here. And people say, well, I don't know if I trust you about anything anymore. And if I don't trust you about Donald Trump, why should I believe you when you tell me he's a liar? He is a liar. He does get things wrong. He does make stuff up. But why should I believe CNN when they tell me that? Why should I believe MSNBC? They've got it in for them. The media, I've been asked through this website a number of times, do I see this changing? Not anytime soon. Nope.
Yeah, there's such a lack of accountability, and what a lot of people. So I will sort of add a little footnote. You mentioned what we learned from the Durham report. We learned a lot of those same things from the IG report. I don't think there wasn't, any basis for at least suspecting that there was something worth investigating with Donald Trump. The Durham report made it pretty clear, though, the evidence was too thin under normal FBI circumstances, though, and it shouldn't have happened. Um, but one point is that, the dozen or so DOJ and FBI officers who were found guilty of misconduct, they didn't break any law, but they were obviously acted unprofessionally and biased. And they did pay a steep professional price, for how they performed their jobs. In fact, a number of them, if not all of them, actually lost their jobs over it.
Whoa, 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 hold
But
on, hold on, hold on, hold on.
yeah,
One of them is McCabe, the deputy director of this FBI, second in command. How did he pay a price? He's working at CNN, and CNN, this is
that's a good
hilarious.
point.
CNN calls on him, he's a contributor, to comment on the Durham report. The CNN doesn't even say, we're going to ask you, Mr. McCabe, what you believe about the Durham report. We should tell our viewers that you have a vested interest in what you're going to say, obviously, because you
Mhm.
were relieved of your job because of, again, nothing illegal, but stuff that shouldn't have gone on. He hasn't paid any price. He probably has a lucrative deal, probably getting paid more than he did at the FBI. He's on TV.
Well, I'm not sure
Some people
CNN,
pay
being on
price. He
CNN
wasn't
is
one of
a
them.
reward, but no, I get your point. That's a good point. I mean, he really shouldn't be seen as a credible figure at all. Another person who shouldn't be is Adam Schiff. I mean, that guy, he's not part of the media. He's a politician, but he so many times went on, in front of CNN and MSNBC and basically stated as fact that this collusion was coming, that he couldn't talk about the details, but that it was coming. And there has been no accountability for him. I thought that was so bad. I don't think he should have been on the January 6th committee. I don't think he should have been on any sort of investigative committee after that, but he was. But from the media, there is nothing really, in the form of an apology, in the form of a retraction. People just kind of, they're shrugging their shoulders and moving on to the next thing, as if, how it was reported never actually happened. And it's rather amazing.
I totally agree. Totally agree. And the fact that he's invited back on and nobody says, you said you had more than circumstantial evidence linking Donald Trump to the Kremlin. What, what was that evidence? They just have him on as if nothing happened. One of the reasons we're going to talk about whataboutism for about 30 seconds here, John. So fasten your seatbelt because I understand the concept of whataboutism. I'm not as much against it as you are. One of the reasons that I hear from people about why they're unhappy with the media, all they want is one standard. They say, well, the media goes after Donald Trump. It doesn't go after Joe Biden with the same enthusiasm. Okay. It goes after Donald Trump, but how come we didn't get all the news about Hunter Biden? There's a feeling, and people are justified, at least largely justified, believing that the media is more passionate about going after Republicans than Democrats. And when people notice this, they say, don't tell me that I shouldn't like Donald Trump because my gripe is with the media not handling both sides equally, both sides in the same way. That's why they'll rally behind Donald Trump. It's as much despising the media as it is loving Donald Trump. Should I say that again just to make sure everybody, the thing that unites Trump supporters more than anything else is their common belief that the media lies and cheats. They despise the media as more than they love Donald Trump, I think, if that's possible.
Yeah, just a point. I agree with that, and a point on whataboutism. And I always have feel like I have to distinguish these two. I'm all for pointing out double standards. I'm all for pointing out hypocrisy. But I think that the key is to hold on to your own standards when you're pointing out, because whataboutism isn't just simply calling it out. It's rationalizing what your side is doing by pointing to something that the other side has done. And one of the things that I think is particularly um, that doesn't that argument is even weaker in many cases is because a lot of times when you're pointing to what the other side did, it's really not even a comparable issue. I mean, it's something that's much less severe than what you're trying to rationalize from your side. So yeah, I listen, point out hypocrisy all the time, but you got to at least, hold your own standards, I think, at the same time. And you do that. That's why I think we might just disagree a little bit on the definition of what about.
I totally agree with you. And if somebody jumps into what about the other side before they say, you're right, Donald Trump got this wrong, he got it wrong. Now let me ask you about, didn't Joe Biden get something wrong? I'm okay with that. But if they automatically jump to, well, Joe Biden's a liar, why did you bring that up? Are you acknowledging that Donald Trump also gets things wrong? If you won't acknowledge the first part, then don't give me the what about part. That makes sense?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. That's a really good way to put it. There is a distinction there. If you're acknowledging what your side did while pointing out the hypocrisy in the other side, acknowledging what your side did was bad, and doing it, and calling on the other side. I think that's exactly right. That's a good way of describing
Um, is there more to go, or have we solved all the problems of journalism in America?
it. I think that's pretty good. That's probably a good place to end it. We might have even run a little bit long. So thanks everybody for joining us. Is there anything you would like to add, Bernie?
No, we're getting more and more people joining the party, and that's great. Again, tell your friends, and the more the merrier, as I've said more than once.
That's a good point. We have seen a pretty noticeable surge in signups lately, and we want to thank everybody who helped us with that. Passing along word to your friends. You can also gift them a membership. We're seeing a lot of those turn up as well. So yeah, so for everybody watching, if you have any comments, as always, leave them in the comments section. If you have questions for the Friday Q&As, always send us those as well. Bernie?
You could also give a gift to your liberal friends just to drive them nuts. Just if you want to stick a little, make them a little crazy. Although I think while I'm not down the middle, I'm a conservative, and tend to think that liberals are more wrong than conservatives, a lot more wrong. There's enough that we put out that will make your liberal friends annoyed. So if you want to annoy your liberal friends, give them a gift to the to this website.
And I should mention, we do love having our liberal We do have liberal members, believe it or not. Probably our most notable one, Bob from Hawaii. He's always waiting. But we always appreciate those willing to listen to us and engage with us who don't have that same view of the world that we do, or the United States, or various issues. But we definitely enjoy having more than just conservatives come here.
If you read the comments under a political column, even in a place like the Washington Post, which I do read the comments, that's a good way to lose faith in humanity. I am very proud of the fact that our subscribers, and I'm not blowing smoke, are more civil, are more intelligent. When they totally disagree with me, it's in a reasonable way. We have a better audience than the Washington Post. You should read some of those comments. Somebody writes a column that they disagree with. My God, it's horrendous what people write. And that's the Washington Post. That's not some rag.
Yeah,
Uh,
the comment section, I would say our comment section has been as good as your website's been around for over a decade, and um, I think it's as good as it's always been. The discussions are better than I've ever seen them. A lot of smart, discourse, respectful too. So yeah, that's good to see.
Tell your friends. Thank you,
Sounds
John.
great. Sounds great. Everybody have a great day.